Cabinet Secretary Rajiv Goyal, Secretary RPG Mr. V. Srinivas, Secretary DOPT Mr. Tripathi, Mr. Rajput. I can see sitting in the audience some of the very senior veterans as well as senior officers in different ministries and departments of the Government of India. At the outset, I think I have to pat the back of Mr. Srinivas, because if I don't do so, who else would? Srinivas and his team have worked tirelessly for the last several weeks organizing this event, and knowing the kind of person he is, I'm sure he wouldn't have slept last night. And since I'm now got used to receiving about 4 or 5 WhatsApp messages every day from him, updating me on different aspects, I was actually expecting a WhatsApp this morning also, reminding me that I should be there in time. And before that, I sent him a message, please tell him, calm. The job will not end before I reach there. I made it a 5 to 10. So what I'm trying to say is that much of effort and consistent work goes behind organizing an event like this. Sometimes we don't realize this. As Bharva was mentioning, the Civil Services Day is being held after about 2 or 3 years. But I think we can take pride in realizing that in the last 7-8 years, ever since Mr. Modi took over as the Prime Minister, we have actually succeeded in giving it a new kind of a format and a new outlook. The first Civil Services Day, which was addressed by Sardar Patel in 1948 on the same day, that was 21st of April. And of course, that is a part of legacy, because DOPT at that time was part of the Home Ministry, and therefore the Home Minister had to address that before it later on became a part of the Prime Ministerial charge. And since then, for the almost 6 decades, it was, of course, a very grand affair, very sought after. But without sounding impolite, it was more of a reunion happening. We would have an event for half a day, and all the officers would also get together. The past, present, the superannuated, the serving, and then a Chakonsa batch, 60 batch, 65 batch. So that kind of combination, which of course is important equally. But when this government came in, we suggested that we should convert, as we have tried to do in the other departments also, which I'm interested with, even in science technology. We should rather try to combine this fellowship with some kind of an academic activity, which I was used to doing when I was actively working as a medical professional. So we tried to give it a 2-day format, split it into different sessions, and give it kind of a theme for every year, and then sub-themes for each of these sessions, which are relevant to the contemporary India, also relevant to the priorities of the government in place, also relevant to the flagship programs of the government. And I'm glad that, of course, in the beginning I was a little apprehensive how the senior bureaucrats would react, but I'm glad that they have cooperated in because we live to learn, and the knowledge expansion, or what we say in the scientific terms, the doubling of knowledge is happening so fast that it's not easy to keep pace. And as was being mentioned by Srinivas, on the very first Civil Services Day, Sardar Patel said, and I quote, "Your predecessors were brought up in the tradition in which they kept themselves aloof from the common run of the people. And it will be your bounden duty to treat the common man of India as your own." Quote. The matter of fact is that even before Sardar Patel had finished speaking this sentence, the role of the civil servant had already changed. And in fact, he changed the midnight of 1947, 15th August. The collector came to be known as District Development Commissioner. The nomenclature itself was symbol of the change that was happening. It may not have been realized at the moment. But the collector was known as collector because he was supposed to collect revenue for the British Empire and also to impose बुरी कर सकता है. Books were written, literature was written, short stories, pictures made, lagan, other things. Now he was district development. He was supposed to collect revenue, generate revenue for a welfare state. And over the years, this role has evolved. The expectation level has gone up, accountability has increased, the transparency has increased, citizen participation has increased. And therefore, I think it's all the more necessary that an occasion like this becomes also a very important occasion for a serious introspection about how we move from here and where do we move. And many are of saying, rightly so, that the civil services is dedicated to common man, and that is the ultimate goal. All of us say so. I think all those who spoke before me will say this already also. But actually, more than what is being said, we have no option. At the risk of sounding a little unauthorized, we have no option but to be citizen friendly. Because I can foresee times happening where citizens are going to take over a lot much of governance. And therefore, the tremendous foresight Prime Minister soon after he took over on the 26th of May 2014, he gave us the mantra, maximum governance, minimum government. I know how much we would have realized in the service, but this is going to happen. I think a day is coming. It's going to be looked after by governance, by the people who govern themselves. And that is why when I was discussing with Srinivas and I said we should have the theme of Vision 2047 and we should have a committee constituted to prepare a document. And the first two presentations I was not very much, I won't say impressed because I have no entitlement to be impressed or not. But I look forward to be executed every day. So I try to make this point that unfortunately we are still looking at 2047 through the prism of 2022. And maybe in 2047 the civil services may lose their relevance. The artificial intelligence may take over in a big way. The citizen may take over. So we first need to have indices. Like you go back 25 years back from now. That was really 1997. What was revolutionary at that time? You had the courier service. Revolutionized it. The entire dark system collapsed. It was a new revolution. And a new source of livelihood. Where is it now? You have STD booths, people making livelihood. And being public life, I remember, people who come to the elected representatives have take STD का लाइसेंस दिलवा दीजिए, औलाद पल जाएगी, बच्चे पल जाएंगे, लेकिन बच्चों को पढ़ने से पहले STD बूथ बंद हो गए. So see how fast this 25 years runs, and now the pace is even faster. You had small cases, whatever T series, carrier, the great one. Where is all that gone? So it's difficult actually to look at the things from our perspective. So I think it's a very difficult task actually which we have taken upon ourselves. But when the Prime Minister says perform, reform and transform, the same mantra will be underlying throughout where we go. And I'm glad that over the last 8 years, much headway has been made, which was actually waiting to happen. As Mr. Goiba rightly mentioned, the e-office thing, and in the context of COVID. I think the greatest test for the e-office experiment was the COVID times. At least in this ministry, the Ministry of Personnel, we did not allow the work to be interrupted even for a single day. And even during the lockdown, since I used to actually speak to each of the officers, because we had that 50% thing. So those sitting at home, some of them not well, some of them positive, sometimes they're working. So I still remember, I very fondly keep narrating. One of the junior officers said the new dictum, sir, should be minimum attendance, maximum output. Because the officers working from home were working even on weekends, on Saturdays, Sundays, festivals. They had got out, they had liberated themselves from that mindset. कि 10 से 5 तक काम करना, बीच में lunch break. Like they shot that famous short story. 10 बजे दौड़ते पहुंचे, बस लेट हो गई, 11 बजे पहुंचे, बाहर नहीं पढ़ सकी, 11:30 बज गए, चाय पी, 12 बज गए. जब तक वापस आए तो किसी के साथ DOPT का होम मिनिस्ट्री के साथ हॉकी का मैच चल रहा है, तो आप यहाँ बैठे हैं, तो वहां चले गए मैच खेलने. और खेलते 7 बज गए, जब वापस आए थके आ रहे, खटिया पर बैठे तो वो आई और बोली कि साहब क्यों इतना काम करते हो, कितनी बार कहा। तो बोलते भगवान तुम्हें क्या पता भारत सरकार ऐसी ही चलती है क्या। So this is, I think, the liberation of the mindset that has happened thanks to Prime Minister Modi. He could foresee many of this e-working even before we were actually confronted with this kind of a problem. And I'm glad to say that the other ministry governor where I was for almost 7 years, we were the first to go in line. Nearly 6 years ago, because we realized that we had to remain connected to Shillong where we had the NEC headquarters. Similarly, this is also a government, I'm saying so because being a researcher and a scientific mind, we keep thinking while moving around. Very often this is not realized. Often each government, each politician, each leader, each officer is pride in narrating. मैंने ये कानून लाया, हम रिटायरमेंट के बाद जो सुबह सैर करते हैं, मेरे जमाने में ये हुआ था, प्रिवेंशन ऑफ करप्शन एक्ट मैंने लाया था, फिर मैंने ऐसे किया, फिर मैंने, then you take a lot of, you enjoy narrating your anecdote, regardless of whether the other were interested or not. But you do so, that's our human nature. This is a government which would take pride in having said that we did away with many rules. 1,500 rules we have done away. Within weeks after taking over in 2014, we did away with that gas attestation. And I placed before the seniors, I said, this is something which, the kind of background that we come from. When we used to be getting into class 9 or 10, we didn't know where to look for a vested officer. For me, my level, we didn't have access. By when I was in class 11, I had to share a rules file, which I also didn't have, somebody else paid for it. But this file time came, he said, give me all your certificates, I'll get them attested. I know where the gazetted officer lives. Well, we didn't know whether he has 2 years or 3 years, what kind of his guest, what he looks like. And the Honorable Prime Minister was so supportive, he said, if that is so, and we actually sent out a message that we have the capacity to trust the citizens of this country, the youth of this country. The Assistant Secretary experiment is another one, which is pathmaking. 3 months of stint. We weren't sure how well it would be taken. Actually, why I'm saying so, that we have undertaken some of the revolutionary experiments, which a lot of anticipation that they might antagonize those with whom we are experimenting. Like, for example, extending sales of this day to a 2-day can make it, and also essentially. In fact, there were opinions that the states, they would like to go to states straight away, the state cadre to become SDM. Some of the states also, state governments also insisted that no, we would not like them to stay back for 3 months. And Honorable Prime Minister also gave us the freedom to experiment and then decide whether to move on, how much or not. And we were actually very sure. But then we could counsel these youngsters. We said, look here, this is good for you. Otherwise, when you stay there at the age of 25, 26 as SDM, and wow, you are treated like an emperor, you get confused which world you landed in. And the rest of the life, so it's a very kind of a good leveling happening over here. And this we felt vindicated during COVID times, when each of the members of the ministry were allotted districts to monitor on day-to-day basis. I was monitoring 22 districts. When I would call up, and we would call up the collectors and the police heads of the district. The youngster on the other side would say, sir, I'm assistant secretary tha na, aapko bhul gaye. So that kind of level of confidence among youngsters, you will not be able to read the central secretary or have a glimpse of the Prime Minister for the entire service career. And now they look back with not only a great deal of nostalgia, but also they look up to some of the seniors whom they worked as their mentors. Similarly, aspirational district. I think it's a trendsetter, something unique which might not have been tried in government sector across the world. It was a scientific basis laid down on the basis of 30, 40 indices which we tried. And not necessarily the backward district. Because we had indices, certain districts may be lagging behind, so how best to bring it at par with the best one on that parameter in the state vis-a-vis best one at the national level, so that there will be a mutual competitive sense and they will be able to determine their own threshold standards. And since I was actively involved along with Amitabh Kant and others, so it was a great learning experience. And the young civil servants were so innovative in carrying forward these saturation points. We had what I'm saying so is that since there's also going to be a learning period for 2 days, we had a joint secretary because as the cabinet secretary was mentioning, the government had appointed Prabharis for different aspirational districts. So we had this lady for a northeastern district. The problem was when the gas cylinder would be exhausted, how best to replace it. So she innovated a method. She called the sarpanches there, entrusted them with a couple of cylinders, said, "Aap hi motabar, aap hi leader. So it was a win-win situation. The representative would also feel happy कि मुझे चौधरी बना दिया, and she also got along to get her saturation points. So I think these new experiments, inspired by Prime Minister Modi, has actually induced us to experiment with ourselves as well and to discover some of the innovative traits which possibly even we didn't realize. Mission Karmayogi is already spoken, Cabinet Secretary shift from rule to rule. Now, problem is that in the academy we are trained कि सरकार का इकबाल रखना. So if I am health secretary, I have to that I can know more like some than doctor, so I can make even corrections in the prescription because I have to command the doctors and the medical profession. Next day I go to agriculture, I become agriculture secretary, then I have to be knowing agriculture more than the agriculturist. So I don't grudge that because it's important to carry on this kind of a certain amount of authority located there. But this Karma Yogi will give it a scientific mechanism. You train yourself for the new role, wherever you are placed, whether it's empanelment or to transfer. So you have the confidence to be actually commanding over the department and the professions. And I think it's become all the more important because now lots of new schemes which have been flagged up by this government are hugely technology-based, science-based. And the same team headed by Mr. Tripathi, earlier by his predecessor, Mr. Chandramouli, worked on the NRA, for which also we have to compliment them. And the combined eligibility test is going to be again a great revolution. So, having been in this department for almost 8 years, more than the tenure of having worked with 6 DOPD secretaries and having with 6 ARPG secretaries, I have had the fortune of learning too many things from them. So I can go on and on. But just to cut that short, I would say the next, and of course the CP ground, which Srinivas is looking after. We just used to have lakh registered complaints a year. Today we have 25 lakh. Media has some proof कि मोदी सरकार के खिलाफ शिकायतों की तादाद बढ़ गई. And they asked me, and I said, no, the answer was given by 150 years ago. My someone called Mirza Ghalib who said कि जब तवक्को ही उठ गई गालिब क्यों किसी का गिला करे कोई. We have been wrong. It's not easy. The lady heading the team under Mr. Srinivas used to sit till 1 o'clock in the night to make sure that every Friday evening we would have a disposal rate of not less than 95-96%. We won the trust of the complainants by following timelines. And I used to myself sit on the Friday evenings. And when for a couple of consecutive weeks, she came back with 98%, having sat till 2 o'clock. I told her, ma'am, I think you have to spend full night to achieve 100%. Because till 3 o'clock you achieve only 98. So that kind of diligence and dedication has gone into this. And now, before I conclude, I think what we have before us, as Prime Minister is always been saying this, Amrit Mahakal and 75 years, and that is the first session dedicated to the 2047. I think when we are in the process of preparing the document, we also will have to keep in mind our focus on those who have active 25 years to put in, because they are going to be the architects of Century India. Many of us may not be around at that time because Now the 70% of the population, we are all in minority, although market provides all kinds of colors, so you can choose to look how old you want. But the matter of fact is that we will have to focus on those who are there contributing to civil services actively for the next 25 years. And our contribution of this generation could be in the form of building up their capacity. So that even if we are not playing an active role, we are not around at that time, we would have the satisfaction of saying, look here, we will also contribute in building the capacity of these. The seniors like Mr. Goyva and others. And they will in turn have the privilege of telling their children, grandchildren, look here, I was the Secretary below PT when India observed 100 years of its independence. So it's that kind of a teamwork which I have any said and suggested to Mr. Srinivas, and we will also have a team which will be working in that direction. Thank you very much. And I'm sure the session that will follow will give us a good take-home message. Thank you.
धन्यवाद और आभार माननीय आपकी प्रेरणा के लिए। और अब हम निवेदन करते हैं जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव रिफॉर्म्स इन पब्लिक